I'm Nick Armstrong, and you're watching Dear Fort Collins, a podcast featuring the people that make Fort Collins a wonderful place to live. This series of episodes is all about the election that's happening in November 2025. And we're interviewing all of the different candidates for mayor, city council, and PSD school board. And we want to hear from them in their own words about why they're running, what they care about, and you then can be more informed about who you're voting for when it's time to fill out your ballot. With ranked choice voting, it's really difficult to know sometimes who your candidates are and what order you're going to rank them in. So I hope these series of episodes really help you figure out which candidates best align with your interests and needs. And as we do these interviews, I want you to know that I have given the candidates access to the questions in advance. I try to ask all of the candidates the same questions, or at least give them an opportunity to answer the same questions in the same kind of way. And there's very minimal editing on any of these episodes. So unless there was an errant sneeze or a cat jumping on someone's lap, you're hearing from the candidates in their own words. I do have a quick disclaimer to give you that I serve on the Parks and Recreation Board for the city of Fort Collins, and my opinions on this show are my own. They're not the position of the board or of the city. And I have also advised a number of the candidates about their campaigns, and in some cases have either helped with their campaigns or made a donation here or there. I do my absolute best to make sure that they all get fair treatment, that there aren't any favorites being played, and that also we're asking them the same types of questions and they have an opportunity to answer those in kind. I hope that you enjoy these episodes and that they help you become a more informed voter in the upcoming election. And if you do have any questions, concerns, or comments, please let me know and reach out on the Dear Fort Collins website. I'm always happy to hear from you. And some of the questions that you'll hear me ask of the candidates have been submitted by listeners and watchers just like you. Folks who are fans of the show and want to know more about particular candidates and their positions on particular things. So with that, let's get on with the show. This episode of Dear Fort Collins, we have Daisy Montgomery, who is running for city council in District 1. Daisy, welcome to the show.
Hiya, Nick.
How are you? What's going on in your world? Not much, right? You can't be
Not
busy
at all.
District 1, my home district, we've interviewed all of the candidates from District 1. You are on our show now. Daisy, welcome to the show, first of all, and what motivated you to run for office?
Well, first, I have to have a disclaimer. Since I am the vice chair of the Disability Advisory Board here in Fort Collins, all of my opinions are my own and do not reflect the board of the Disability Advisory Board. There, I said it. Now I am Daisy, running for city council. Yay! Okay, the question, why am I running, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I've been an advocate, a disability advocate for a long time now, even before I moved to Fort Collins, which I've been here for 7 years now, by the way. Time has flown. And I really saw, especially coming into 2025, people, especially in the working class, our nonprofits, we're starting to suffer. Small businesses as well. We've been talking about this recession recently, but working class people and small business owners and nonprofits have been done knowing that there's a recession, right? Since the beginning of the year. And so I am a doer. I am not really a complainer. And so when I saw that grants were really soft, that people's operational costs in their small businesses were going up 60 to 70% because of tariffs, because people just weren't spending as much in the local economy, when working class people were saying, I can barely afford groceries. I can't afford a house here. Moving to the bedroom communities, I thought to myself, okay, I have been a disability advocate. How can I serve my district and Fort Collins as an entire community more holistically. And that's why I'm running.
I want to dive into the idea of community support around nonprofits and small businesses in particular later on in the episode. For right now, I'm interested in what unique experience you bring to the table and what makes you especially qualified to represent District 1.
That is a great question, Nick. I like the way you think. Well, for one, I actually worked with the federal government for 13 years. And what does that mean? That means I have seen it all, truly. I have managed extremely large budgets. I was a program manager with the Department of Defense supporting our troops. But really, what that meant for me was balancing a lot of different priorities from a lot of different influential people who were really passionate about their priorities and helping them meet in the middle so that we could reach our mission objectives, right? To serve our people. And so that comes with a lot of strategy that you have to know. You have to know how to work with people, and you have to know how to balance a budget, a very large budget, because in the federal government, they set these budgets years in advance, and that's all the money you get. And so that has given me an extraordinary amount of hard and soft skills that a lot of candidates do not have going into this kind of race. And in addition, I'm a small business owner. So I also understand the risk it takes. Like, it takes a lot of gumption and backbone to really give up a career like that and say, I'm going to do something completely different. For me, that was pivoting into advocacy full time and saying, I'm going to dip into that 401k. I'm going to dip into my savings to do something completely different. And as you know, Nick, being a small business owner yourself, that takes a lot of scrappiness and pulling, putting on your big girl pants. Well, not for you, not your big girl pants, but my big girl pants, and getting to work because no one is going to build your business for you but you. And if you can build a business, you can really do anything. And so I bring a lot of different perspectives to this role. In addition to, I grew up military, I'm married to a disabled combat veteran, and I'm also autistic. And so I really understand a lot of different perspectives and needs going into this that other candidates just don't.
Knowing that you have a background in uh, federal project management, can you
Mhm.
share a specific project or issue that you'd like to tackle first at our level, the city council?
I would say one of the biggest issues that our city council and just government in general struggles with is siloed government. We have an issue with not communicating early and often. And it really hurts us when it comes to redundancy. We tend to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And when it comes to fiscal responsibility, that can be an issue, especially now when we're facing what's called black swan events in program management, project management, where, oh, suddenly the federal government is saying, you don't need these millions of dollars to fund your community projects. We're just going to take that back. And then suddenly you have a shortfall. State budgets the same way. You have $1 billion shortfall. And there's a lot of things that play into that, but federal funding being pulled is certainly not helping the situation. So then suddenly you're faced with these really hard choices of what programming do we cut? What projects do we cut? Because we don't have an emergency fund, so to speak, to cover those losses. And so, what I would like to see more of is a more programmatic view of government. How are we working together at all levels of our local government so that when these kind of events happen, we are already all are on the same page so that it's like, oh, federal government's like, well, we're just not going to give you $45 million. We're fine because you know what? We already consolidated millions of dollars in case this happened. And we don't have to turn off, homeless resources, in case just to save some bucks. Or we don't have to say, do we really need art installations for the upcoming fiscal year? Things like that.
So, having my own nonprofit, my own small business, and having talked with a number of the different mentors and folks who helped, bring around this entrepreneurship in me and help support that, many of whom are women entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
What do you see as the role of the city in supporting small business owners of all stripes, and
Yeah.
especially nonprofits and programs and initiatives that maybe aren't part of the official city initiatives?
What do I think the role is of the city?
Yeah, so we've got things, and to clarify, because I know that was a sort of big question, the and a lot of different pieces to it. So to simplify, what are areas that you believe that the city should play in supporting arts and nonprofits and small businesses and
Hmm.
creating an environment where they can survive and thrive beyond programs that are things like Fort Fund and other
Yeah.
aspects that are official city initiatives?
Well, I feel like one of the issues that Fort Collins is facing is that we have put a lot of regulation on top of small businesses to the detriment of small businesses. And and it's one of those things that you have to balance with. We want low barriers of entry for entrepreneurs, right? So, one of the things I'm really passionate about is creating economic power for marginalized communities, such as, the neurodivergent community, the disabled community, LGBTQ community, BIPOC community, right? But then at the same time, we also in the city will say, hey, small businesses, we need you to put in $500,000 to update all of your buildings to be green. Well, a lot of small businesses don't have that kind of funding to just do that, right? And it's what I would call death by a thousand cuts. And so it's like, you got to do this one cut over and over again. And so what we're actually seeing is companies leaving Fort Collins to go to bedroom communities where there isn't as many regulations like that so that they can thrive more because there are those lower barriers to entry, but then there's not the green climate initiatives. But we want to have climate initiatives, but we also don't want to stamp out small businesses either. So, like Costco recently left Fort Collins to go to Timnath. Well, that isn't a small business, but it still hurt our sales revenue for the city. Um, but when we see like Old Town, for example, we see a lot of smaller boutique businesses leave Old Town, and then we'll have like a sleep mattress company move in. And it's like, is that what we want? Do we really want like a chain to move into Old Town? But that's who can afford to be in Old Town. especially when we keep just like crushing the small businesses. So I really feel like the city could do better at supporting small businesses. And I think one of the ways that we could do that is by working with the Economic Health Office and saying, okay, well, what if we had a low interest loan fund for businesses, for example, for small businesses that say, you're working in your small business, your pipes burst, all your inventory is ruined. Well, if you don't have the money to just automatically replace all of that inventory, what if you were able to go to the economic health office and say, can I tap into this low interest loan so I can replace that inventory, get back on track, but this loan isn't going to bankrupt me in the process? Like, I would love to see things like that. And legacy businesses that I've spoken to in the area would love to see that too. Because how is it that, Amazon, Walmart, they can get subsidies from the government, not pay their employees living wages. Meanwhile, they can survive recessions or, the government will bail them out, like when Ford went under, right? Um, and yet, when small businesses need help, there's never anything there for us. So I would really like to see something like that.
The city is often, and city staff have defined their role as conveners to bring the small businesses to the table. And do you see that the city's role can extend beyond that into facilitating spaces of like mutual aid or something else like that in terms of how
Mhm.
to support? Because you mentioned a low interest loan. I think that there are external to the city, maybe some programs that do that. The Colorado Enterprise Fund and some of these other things that exist outside of our community that aren't specific to Fort Collins. And while they have statewide influence, they might not be specific to, the interests or knowledge of Old Town in particular. Um, do
Yeah.
you do you see that the city has a role to play in those spaces as well?
Well, it's one of, like I said, it's that balance, right? I do feel like on one hand, like you said, no one knows Fort Collins better than Fort Collins. But I've also had business owners say, I've gone to the city asking for help when I've been in this town serving the community for decades. I needed help. They couldn't give me any resources to help when I needed it. And so I had a choice to make. Do I completely shut down my business that is an integral part of the fabric of Fort Collins and let a big box store or a chain take my place? Or do I, completely pivot? There's a lot of questions right now around what is the role of the free market and what is the role of the government right now? Because I think a lot of people are frustrated again, how many subsidies that large corporations get for their businesses, kind of like Enron in the early thousands, where it was like they were too big to fail. And then when small businesses ask for help, there's just doesn't tend to be a lot for us. So, but again, also when we're talking about those statewide kind of like enterprise funds, right? They're also super competitive. So there's really not enough resources for the need. And I think that's another issue as well. So balancing those is tough.
What do you see the city's, and this maybe is tangential, but what do you see the city's role and responsibility in ensuring that its climate and sustainability goals are hit? Knowing that also the impacts for some of those things are often felt by the disadvantaged communities or folks that are paying for it on the other end with, the businesses side of it. Do you see that the city
Mhm.
can strike a balance, and what do you see as the role there?
I think at right now, at this point in time, we need to be asking ourselves, are we taking care of our people? And I think if the answer is no, we're not, then we need to be asking ourselves, what can we reprioritize so we can take care of our people? Because what good, and I believe in climate change. Well, there is no believing, the science backs it up, right? What good is caring about climate change if in the meantime people can't put food on the table? And I think that's a really important conversation that our government needs to have. Because right now, with the way that, again, death by a thousand cuts for our small businesses, when we're doing that to our small businesses, and as a result, we're hurting our own local economy because small businesses can't pay those kind of fees to meet those climate goals, then we kind of have to be like, well, what are we doing here? Is it worth the cost? Now, water is a different thing. Now, that the Halligan water dam project, that I'm in full support of that because I think the next like real wars are gonna be about water, because we're already fighting about water with like Thornton. We're already like fighting about who can access our rivers because of droughts. So that to me is like its own issue over like carbon emissions and things like that. So, but again, there's no easy answers. But I also think if we're going to serve the people, we have to serve the people.
So to that point, knowing that the majority of growth in Fort Collins is going to happen in District 1, Northeast Fort Collins, over the next several years, how do you, what is your approach to water and growth planning, and specific to traffic flow and safety as well, and the other infrastructure concerns that come along with growth?
Well, District 1, Northeast Fort Collins in particular, I want to say what infrastructure? Because uh, because if you go straight up to LeMay, you go straight up LeMay, you hit Country Club, um, and you're a biker, you're a pedestrian, good luck because there aren't even bike lanes. There aren't any way, no guarantee you won't be just run over. Um, so I really feel for the people of Northeast Fort Collins right now because I can't imagine the frustration living up there with no connectivity to the rest of Fort Collins. So right now, there are no bike trails. There are very limited to no in certain areas, no ADA crosswalks, no light crosswalks for kids to get to school. If your child goes to Tavelli Elementary, I wouldn't feel safe for my child to walk to school because there's no way for them to get there. Sidewalks, what are those? Are you going to have to wish yourself to school? Um, Cell phone service is really spotty or non-existent in certain areas. What I was saying was, I hope you like living in your car if you live in Northeast Fort Collins, because that's what you're going to be doing because there's no amenities up there. So there's no grocery store. There's no, if your kids are in karate, well, you're going to have to be driving. Football, whatever extracurriculars, because you're going to be in the car half the day. And that's frustrating. I've had people tell me that they have moved from Northeast Fort Collins to Midtown Fort Collins because they're tired of driving. And I would really like to address that. I want to see more infrastructure put in place. I want to see people's concerns taken seriously. And when it comes to um, development, there's a lot of this back and forth between, well, we don't want to develop anymore because what about Fort Collins character? And it's like, well, have you been to Northeast Fort Collins? Because people have legitimate concerns and needs regarding their quality of life up there. And I think it's really out of touch and selfish to tell an entire area of Fort Collins, well, you don't need a grocery store, you don't need a park, you don't need connectivity for your bike because it could mess up the character of Fort Collins, as if they don't add or contribute to the community. So frustrating.
Agreed. And it's you're speaking my language on a lot of those things. I think as somebody who had this was where the most affordable housing in the city was, is the entry level housing for folks that
Mhm.
wanted to come into the community. And the paradigm in Fort Collins has always been something that has also hindered us in that development must pay its own way. Where
Mhm.
we see Montava and other similar projects, Sonder and all of these other things, stalling out as a result of a lack of water availability in the community, that also
Yep.
stalls out the infrastructure. So I'm wondering if there is a pathway that you see where something like the strategic trails plan, the active modes plans that outline when and how trails come and connected to Northeast Fort Collins in particular, knowing that those things are prioritized heavily in those plans as well. Is there a space where development may not occur as quickly as it needs to in order to backfill that infrastructure, but still it's being conducted anyway, in your mind as a city council person?
I know that for the Halligan Water Project, for example, which is 25 miles northeast of Fort Collins, still in Larimer County, that would expand the reservoir where we hold all of our current water, right? The dam right now needs updating for its infrastructure. It would increase the square mileage by 8,200 square miles, right? And the water wouldn't need to be pre-treated. It would help with water supply for at least the next 50 years. But everything government related moves at the speed of snot, like cold snot, right? Yeah, that's a nice image, right? So right now, for example, we're still in the permit phase for that. And we did in June of this year just get another permit, but we still need federal permits. And with the administration changes, We don't know how fast that process is going to go and how that could say that the Halligan Water Project was finished overnight. Would that increase the speed of infrastructure in Northeast Fort Collins? I would certainly hope so, but we don't know. And that's the thing is we have to use data to project what we think would happen. Um, but then also we have to think about tap fees for developments for housing. And we already give developers kind of a deal on that. I know that developers are already asking, would there be more of a deal on that if we were able to build more quickly? I don't know if that's going to happen because we already have something in place for that. I know Montava, there was that back and forth of whose water are we going to use. And so, I think with the strategic bike trail, I don't see why we can't at least start on that. You know, for housing development, I think it's going to be a lot more complicated than the bike trail would be, though.
Well, and just seeing how the city of Fort Collins has allocated funding through things like the CCIP, specific
Yes.
and strategic sales taxes and other things like that, but also knowing that those acts, those add burden to small business community. A lot of our levers are pretty hard to access at this point. And I would also say that because of the the joint management of Northeast Fort Collins that for infrastructure in particular that spans across both city and county interests, there's some
Yes.
complications there. So, um, do you have a specific idea for how to address the that dichotomy of interests while also knowing that there are so many different funding sources and that we also can't, we're looking at a sales tax deficit
Yes.
that is shrinking. The base is shrinking because folks are maybe not spending money in Fort Collins. They're spending it elsewhere, or they're spending less money. Um, where are you hopeful that we will be able to find some of the funding to develop that infrastructure that you're talking about, those bike lanes, those sidewalks, those trails?
Hmm. Well, first, we have to look at what was already allocated because, like we were saying, government money is usually allocated in advance, right? So, what was already allocated to this project because we didn't just magically come up with a strategic bike trails plan at like this year, right? It's been years in the making. So, what was already allocated? What are we looking at for fiscal year 2026? And that's already in the discussion because usually for government, you start looking at that in between August and October, setting that budget for 2026 so you already know what you're going into. We know going into 2026 there are going to be cuts. I don't know what those cuts are going to be yet. Um, I would be really interested to see what they will be. Now, what we have to be careful of is reading the room. And that really requires transparency in government and meeting people where they are. So, for example, right now they're floating, charging money for parking in Old Town. And people are not happy about that, right? Because they're thinking to themselves, why are you charging me money to park, to spend money in Old Town when I'm already there to spend money in Old Town? but I'm already struggling to pay my bills. But the problem that that the government is having is that they're just saying we're just going to make you pay for parking, and that's it. We need to say and spell it out. This is exactly the state of things. This is our reasoning behind why we are considering these things and asking for input. Because that's why people don't feel heard or represented in government anymore. And we've been doing that repeatedly in Fort Collins for the past several years. And I think if we were more transparent about where, like, the state of Fort Collins, instead of just being like, everything's great. Did you see the new art installation? Did you see the new playground? And we're just honest about, hey, um, you know how we used to say Fort Collins was recession proof? Well, we're not anymore. And here's why. Because these bedroom communities have shown consistent growth. They're cheaper to live in. They have shopping now. They have housing that our teachers, our professors, our working class can afford, that Fort Collins can't afford like that they can't afford here anymore. Like, if we were really honest about that stuff, then people would say, okay, then let's maybe give this Old Town parking fee stuff a try, right? Or even, like dashboards or something. Give people a tangible, real goal as to what we're using this money for. Instead of saying we're going to tax you more and we're going to give you a nebulous reason as to why we're going to tax you. And we're going to say it's going to be for this, but people want to see right now for real what this money is going towards. Otherwise, it just feels again like that death by a billion thousand cuts when people are just trying to, you know, send their kids to school, buy some, name brand groceries along with the generic, and just sit and watch their favorite show on Netflix and sometimes eat a nice pizza without having to bake it themselves.
You've touched on a number of really important concepts, which the first of which is that local government has to be accessible to the people. I think that that's a really astute observation, because if you're trying to live your life in Fort Collins, you're maybe not concerned about the complexities of CCIP or why Old Town parking suddenly is no longer free on Sundays, for instance. All of those things are just inconveniences to you that you pay out of pocket unless you can see the impact and it's communicated to you. And I've made no secret of the fact that I think our city staff is truly world class, excellent, but they can handily defeat any other city staff in any competition you'd like to put them in front of.
Yeah.
The question here is, when you have something as big and complex as the city government, how do you make that more accessible? I heard you mention the idea of dashboards. We've recently tried out the civic assembly process for the complex solution of hues. We
Hmm.
also saw at the same time another group of residents that ran a side-by-side, hues as a natural area only petition, which
Yeah.
will also be on the ballot. So, uh, knowing that there are many different competing influences, that we all love this place called Fort Collins, how do you see us navigating making government more accessible while also allowing folks to have a say in what they care about?
Well, the number one thing to remember is you can't make everyone happy. If I mean, if you could, no one would be complaining, right? But that's what America is for. That's why we have the First Amendment, Boston Tea Party way back then. No taxation without representation, right? That's what we do. That's what we're the best at. Um, with the Hughes thing, I think that the system's working as intended. We voted we voted on Hughes originally, what was it, 6 years ago? And it passed with the original ballot language. And even though it's frustrating for the people that voted initially that we passed it, that another group is like, I'm not happy with the original language that I myself wrote. Um, that's democracy, right? They have the right to say, I don't like that. And the people who voted for it originally have the right to say, I thought it was great being a multi-use space. So I think it's working as intended. And the best thing that we can do is let it play out and let the people decide, you know. Um, when it comes to accessibility, one of the things that we need to get better at, and I know the city is working on it, we have too many websites. We have so many websites that even I'm like, we have FC Moves, we have fc.gov, we have My City, we have so many that I'm like, which one will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
You
Okay,
forgot about access also.
uh, oh
Access
yeah,
for con. Um,
you
I
know,
I hear you on all of those things. It is the ability of the city to convey a message is only as strong as its ability to simplify these incredibly complex systems. Um,
yeah,
and across the board, so many different information streams that it becomes really difficult to pay as a citizen pay attention to. And you and I know this is serving, fully acknowledging the boards that we serve on, fully staffed, excellent people. Even that can be drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
oh
And
yeah,
when citizen government is baked into the entirety of the system, it's a complex thing that you have to navigate. You have to come from a place of understanding, knowing, curiosity, also to learn.
yeah.
I love the approach of saying, "Hey, let the people have their voice and allow the system to play out." Um, or do you see that besides simplifying the websites, besides things like civic assembly process, besides allowing folks to have their say on things like ballot initiatives, are there other low-hanging fruits in this space, or do you think that we're maybe heading in the right direction, or do you see that there's something that we need to change?
I think speaking in layman's terms is really great. And also thinking about how people consume information now. We have our phones and people are getting their information through short form now, short form videos. They want to know the information in 1 minute or less. And even like on the campaign trail, it's hard for me to talk about these really complex issues in a minute or less because they're so meaty. But we have to find a way to engage people with our government in a way that people will actually digest it and want to engage in it. So I think really playing around with those concepts and also not talking down to people, talking to them is really important because I think people are tired of feeling like politicians are talking down to them. They want to be talked to as an equal, because it's my firm belief that it's not the president, it's not the senator, the mayor, or the council person that's the most important role in America. It's the citizen. And it's the people that are the ones that have the power. The rest of us that are running for office, we're just here to serve, right? And if we're sitting here like being like, oh, well, I know what's best for you, then we're not doing our job. We're supposed to be listening and saying, how can I serve you in the community? So I think we could do a much better job at doing that.
One of the things that the community has been asking for loudly has been affordable housing. And knowing that that's a big complex issue tied to a number of different things. I'm not going to ask you for a soundbite. What I will ask you for is, how do you think that we can start to address this problem as a community?
How do I think we can start to address it?
How do you think that we can start to address affordable housing as a community? Given that we have all of these other priorities, given that we have,
Hmm.
you know, sustainability, climate initiatives, that we also want to support our small businesses, that we know there's a sales tax base, that we have water issues in Northeast Fort Collins, connectivity issues, that development is expensive, that the developers are already asking for breaks on their ability to, come in and pay fees and whatever else. How do we balance all of those levers, and what do you see as maybe the first steps towards addressing affordable housing in Fort Collins?
Well, I think it's important to think about this issue as a slow moving train that has been crushing us for decades now. I think that affordable housing is like this buzzword right now, right? But it's been an issue for a long time. So since, I mean, the 2008 crisis was just really a small taste of what was to come. Subprime mortgages, people are underwater. People are underwater with their mortgages right now from COVID. Okay. And housing is really important to me because when the dot-com crash happened, and for those that aren't familiar with the dot-com crash, um, that was when companies were being overvalued because the internet was new and everyone was like, oh my God, if a company has a website, then they must be super valuable, right? And then the market crashed and everyone was like, oh, I guess just because you have a website doesn't mean that your company is worth anything. Market crashed, housing crashed, everything crashed. And my family lost their house. I grew up working class. My parents were both veterans. My family got their first like big time job out of the military, working in telecom. We had our first like big home. Dot-com crash happened. My dad lost his retirement. We had lost our savings and we lost our house. And we had to sell everything we had, even like my family dog. So I was literally sleeping on the floor and we ate cube steak every night because it was a discount meat and it was cheap. And so housing is really important to me because I know what it's like to have it and then have it taken away. Now, with all that said, we have not changed the federal minimum wage in decades. I think it's what, since 2007? I mean, it's still $7.25 is the federal minimum wage. We've had wage stagnation. We have hedge funds buying up houses and just renting them out or just sitting on them. Then we had the housing crash in 2008, which dropped supply because no one was building. And then declining birth rate. Then we've had proportionate wealth gap that has increased. Student loan debt has increased. I mean, it's been just one thing after another that has added to this affordable housing crisis. And so anyone that tells you, oh, when I'm elected, I'm going to solve all the affordable housing crisis issues in Fort Collins is lying to you, because it's going to take a federal effort, a state effort, but also a local effort to really address it. What I would like to see is our largest employers start to take more of accountability for the low wages that they're paying our teachers and city staff even. And I know that there's going to be some people that are like, oh my God, you can't say that. But I totally just did. So, you know, but when our teachers can't even afford to live here and they have one of the most important jobs in existence, and our city staff, like you said, is one of the best in the country, and they can't afford to live here. I've had a connection worker, when I've done door knocking, cry because they've told me I'm going to lose my house that I grew up in because I work full time, my spouse works full time, and I still can't afford the mortgage. That's a problem. Okay. So I think there needs to be more accountability there. I think there needs to be land banking that's done by the largest employers as well. And I would also like the CCIP, if that passes, to have a low interest fund loan for first time home buyers and bring those benefits or those savings that we're using with local developers and pass those on to first time home buyers so that they can have a chance at getting a home. So those are some of my ideas for at least tackling it. Do I think it's going to be a one and done process? It's going to be iterative. And I do think that some of it is going to have to be subsidized, especially for our disabled population and for our seniors on a limited income.
I haven't heard another candidate tell me that looking at the largest employers, and to be clear what you mean by that, the largest employers in our region, UCH, which is Poudre Hospital, PSD, Poudre School District, CSU, City of Fort Collins, and the Larimer County governments. So of those entities, you are telling us that you would like them to pay more for wages, and also that they need to be doing things like land banking and setting aside things. Now, this is not unprecedented, and I would point out that this is not like incredulity on my part. I just want to make sure that I'm asking that that's what you mean, because we've seen in the past folks like HP come in to Fort Collins, help put folks on boards and things like that, and ensured that there was civic participation, how we got some of our trail networks, how we got a lot of our frisbee golf courses and things like that. They leaned in from the civic side of things, and encouraged their employee base to do the same. What you are asking for in particular is that these entities step up to the plate, increase their wages, and also participate in more of the municipal government process by land banking and other aspects?
Yeah. If they are, again, it goes back to subsidies. A lot of these places get subsidies. And yet the people that make Fort Collins one of the best places to live in the country are not getting paid enough to live here. I think that's a problem.
That's a hell of a take, and I love it. Uh, what shifting gears slightly, talking about folks who and how we can support communities living and trying to stay here in Fort Collins. What do you see and understand as the needs of the LGBTQIA residents and visitors in Fort Collins?
Well, I know that right now a lot of them feel very unsafe. I know during Pride that there was a big uptick in property damage, and they felt like they weren't heard from Fort Collins Police Department on that. Um, there have been, I have had community members come up to me and say, some like Splash NoCo is one of the places that they feel most safe, but that's a nonprofit and it's hurting right now. Our nonprofits are the stopgap between a lot of the services that, if they're a student, PSD, they're looking at having to make difficult decisions with their budget. The city's looking at making difficult decisions with their budget. Nonprofits fill the gap for services. And if nonprofits aren't doing well, then there's no way to get those services. And a lot of our LGBTQIA members are feeling that strain because just like the Autism Society, I sit on the board of directors for the Autism Society of Colorado. We had to cut significant programming. Our executive director had to take an 83% cut in pay to keep our doors open. So I know, and we're a larger nonprofit. So I know that smaller nonprofits are really hurting right now. And so I really feel for our queer community because we're already seeing at the federal level resources being cut. And we're seeing that strain here in Fort Collins as well. Fort Collins is one of the most inclusive communities I've ever lived in, but that doesn't mean that you go 5 miles out and it's just as inclusive. And with rising costs and affordability and all that kind of stuff, they're feeling that with this shifting landscape in the federal government.
Do you feel like the city, and in particular city council, has a role in increasing and ensuring the safety and inclusion of the queer community?
Well, I think they've done a really good job. Um, but I also feel like, we can always do more to make everyone feel more included. But that also includes making sure that our queer community, our veteran community, um, all of our neurodivergent community, our disabled community, I think we need to do better in general at making people feel included and safe. Because I know just from my work in the disabled community, especially when there's intersectionalities. So if someone is queer and disabled, They may feel safe or safer in their queer identity, but they're not safe in their disabled identity. Or they may not feel supported in their veteran identity, which has an extremely high suicide rate post service. So there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Shifting gears slightly, this is our first major election using ranked choice voting.
Uh-huh.
How do you plan to appeal to voters who might not choose you as their first choice, but want to put you somewhere on the ballot?
That's a great question. My philosophy is to always be myself. I will never lie to gain a vote, and I'll never pretend to be somebody I'm not to gain a vote. But what I will promise is that I'll always be upfront. I'm never going to say, I'm going to solve all your problems, but I will say, I want to work together with you and with the community, including people that don't agree with me, people that do agree with me, people that don't care about local government, and I've met people like that. There's someone on my street. I said, hey, I'm Daisy Montgomery and I'm running for city council and I'd love to hear about what issues matter to you. And they were like, I don't give a shit. And I was like, you know what? This is America and you can do that. You know,
It's honest.
um,
It's
it,
honest. And that I
yeah,
had a very similar, not as many as you would think, because Fort Collins voters are they may not know that they care about municipal government in those terms, but they care about something and they care about like what is my experience in Fort Collins? And
yeah,
are you seeing that also as you're doing campaigning?
I am. Like, there's either, there's three modes, right? It's either life is so good that I don't have to worry about anything. Life is, I'm too busy to think about life in Fort Collins, or there is just one issue that makes me so upset that everything is ruined and I have to tell everybody about it. And you know what that issue has been for, when I talk to people? Republic trash service. People are so mad about Republic, or I mean, I know not everyone, but enough people are mad about it that I'm being told I have left bags of trash at Republic's office and blocked the office doorway with my bags of trash. And I'm like, I don't know whether that's hardcore or insane,
Probably a
but
mix of both. I, as somebody who has excellent trash service, I have no, I can fully understand, right? That because Fort Collins has such weird driveways in certain aspects, especially in Old Town, where there's like those weird narrow alleyways and
yeah,
you can only do certain things with trash cans on certain days, and then you can't get your car passed otherwise. Um,
yeah,
and then even some of the newer developments with like weird driveways that back, the front of the house doesn't have a driveway, the back of the house has the driveway, and so where do you put stuff and have to put totes, and then HOAs complicate the issue. So, um, I any major change like that, I feel like there's always there's some undercurrent of an issue happening throughout the city, and it's interesting to hear that trash service is the thing. Um, are there any voter groups or views that you're intentionally not seeking to court or be associated with during this RCV process?
I think everyone deserves representation. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about hate groups and things like that. I mean, I'm not, I don't want to represent those people. But in terms of like conservatives, independents, liberals, progressives, like everyone deserves representation. So I'm not gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna represent those people because of blah blah blah. That's crappy. That's not that's not who I am. I think everybody, for the most part, really wants what's best for their community and for the country. We just have different ideas of how to get there. And there are things that we feel really super passionate about that I think sometimes we don't always know how to have or start the conversation with each other about them. But I think for the most part, if we're talking about everyday Main Street America, I think most people have a lot more in common than not.
Fort Collins is a community. What does it mean to you?
For me, it means home. Growing up military, I never had a real home because we moved so often. Like one time I lived in a place for 3 months. And, so everyone would say like, "Oh, I'm from California, or I'm from North Carolina, or I'm from this place." And when it would finally get to me, I didn't really have some place where I'd be like, yeah, I'm from this place, you know? And when my husband, Barclay, left active duty Army, we had our son Ashton, who was like a little baby at the time. And it was really, really important to me that he had a place to call home and be able to say, I'm from somewhere, and always be able to have someone somewhere to return to when he felt like he needed to come home. And so we chose Fort Collins because they had autism center-based programs in Poudre School District. And we chose here and we haven't regretted it. And so that's why it means home to me.
What would voters be surprised to learn about you? And if you don't have anything off the top of your head, what was your weirdest job?
I think people would be surprised to know that I'm a two-time bowling champion. I have, yeah, I have two championship rings from college and two division titles, and that's how I paid for my bachelor's and my master's.
That
But
is,
I'm retired now.
that's
So,
incredible. As somebody
so
who regularly bowls like 100 somewhere in there, well done.
yeah.
uh, not that that's not a superpower, but if you could have any superpower to help your community, what would it be?
I wish that I could shoot money from my fingertips.
That's that's a good power. That's a new one on me, but also I wouldn't that I think that would be like inflationary, wouldn't it? I mean, not locally. The first couple of minutes would be fun, but then everything else would be after there'd be some consequences there.
Okay, okay, we're not talking about Keynesian economics right now. We're just having fun.
I just
Okay.
okay. You know what? That's on me. I asked for a I asked a blue sky question and then I was like, "Oh, let me question your answer."
I thought you were gonna be like, wouldn't that give you a lot of paper cuts? But
I wasn't thinking of the logistics, but now that you mention it, no, actually, that's ATM, ATM hands. That's a good one.
yeah.
Um, have who do you consider? Just we get so many interesting answers on this show that sometimes it's rare for me to have a moment where I am fully taken aback, and this it's happened twice on this particular episode. So I just want to recognize that as fun.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Thank you. Uh, who do you consider a role model in public service, and what have you learned from them in particular?
I'm a big fan of Teddy Roosevelt. He was a Rough Rider. People tried to be like, "Hey, can you come wrangle your daughter because she's a she's a hellion. She's like drinking at the bars and like telling men like to fuck off and like, because she was just like so badass of a woman and was like, you can't tell me what to do. And Teddy Roosevelt was like, I can't run this country and wrangle my daughter at the same time. So I'm going to run the country. Okay. You know, walk softly, carry a big stick. He was trying to like bust up oligarchies you know, and he would get into fist fights. That's what we need more of. We need more
Just
fist fights.
open brawling in Congress, not hiding behind the podium.
Honestly, though, I feel like if more people like got their ass kicked in Congress, I feel like we would have a different government right now.
Pugilism had its era. I think there's the and to I think that there's a couple anecdotes around this idea. And my particular favorite, just like short form biography of Teddy Roosevelt, comes from Nick Offerman's book Gumption, which is an excellent read on American leadership of all kinds. The idea that that Teddy Roosevelt and some senator of the time had gotten into a fist fight and later about some sort of budgetary thing and were later in the day drinking at their club and relaxing and smoking cigars together. And I think it's telling that we have a lot of soundbite type uh, gotcha isms in the media and elsewhere about our political figures. And then it's about one upmanship, but not necessarily that second part of the reconnection and the working together and the smoking cigars after, nursing black eyes, smoking cigars together, or whatever it is, or whatever the healthy equivalent of that, eating a kale salad together at the end of the day. Uh,
Ugh.
yeah, no, nobody
Do you
likes it. Listen,
remember
nobody
in
likes smoking
2000?
cigars anyway. I'm just saying it's a thing. Um,
Do you remember in 2016 when they try to make kale happen? And I'm like, stop trying to make kale happen. It's terrible.
I'm gonna say
It's
kale
bitter.
chips. Kale chips, though, those are pretty fantastic. Uh,
Well, if you dust anything in cheese dust, I mean, it can make anything tolerable. But I think the thing I like about Teddy Roosevelt is that he really teaches about leadership and that he made the tough decisions. And I think that's what people forget about leadership today. Everyone wants to be the leader until they have to lead. And being a leader means making the decisions that no one else will and owning those decisions, whether they're good or bad, you know. And I think owning those decisions when they're bad or for whatever the consequences of them are, even if with good intentions, I respect someone more when they say, you know what? I made this decision for these reasons. It didn't pan out, and I own that. I respect someone way more than someone who tries to shift blame, like, and I think that's what we're missing from leadership.
accountability.
Yeah. And we've been holding on to this, like, the ghosts of the past of, American exceptionalism. And um, retired General Stanley McChrystal, he talks about how we can't hold on to like World War II heroes anymore. If we want to talk about American exceptionalism, then we have to step up and be exceptional today. And what does that mean? To me, that means each of us waking up and deciding, how can I be my best self for my community today, or my family, or even for myself, you know? And I think that we need to get back to that, but it's hard when we're struggling to eat and to find time to spend time with our families. And we've just really lost sight of what America is all about.
Is there a piece of advice that you received in the past and you didn't follow and now you wish you had?
A piece of advice that I wish that I received, I
And didn't
didn't
follow
follow.
and you wish you had? And failing that,
Hmm.
if you have, what is the best bit of advice that you've received?
I think the best bit of advice that I've received is lead from the front. So lead by example. So whenever I led teams like in the federal government, I would never expect my teams to do something that I myself would not do. Or I would never stand by and be like barking orders at them. I would always be with them doing the work, right? I can't really think of, I mean, obviously, like, besides like, don't date that guy. And then I did date that guy. And then I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't date that guy, you know. But there's nothing really that really sticks out to me for that one.
What do you think Fort Collins will look like 20 years from now?
Well, I think Northeast Fort Collins is going to be way developed. I think that's going to be like its own little town, honestly. I think it's going to have its own vibe, and I think everyone's going to be like, I want to be in Northeast Fort Collins. I think already we're starting to see how Southeast Fort Collins has its own thing going on. Old Town has its own thing. Northeast Fort Collins is going to have its own thing. That's kind of how I envision it being. But it's probably going to be more expensive for sure. Since we're kind of landlocked, since we kind of bought all of the natural area around it. Sprawl is contained, so we're not going to be seeing the same kind of sprawl as like some of the other bedroom communities. And, you know, I think that's going to heavily influence what Fort Collins is going to look like, what quality of life, cost of living, things like that's going to look like.
Well, we've rounded the corner into the portion of the episode of rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You say whatever's on the top of your head.
Okay.
Uh, so, what is your favorite coffee shop?
Mugs.
Favorite brewery?
Odell.
Favorite park?
Spring Canyon.
It's a good park. Uh, Horsetooth hike or Pooter Trail bike ride?
Hooter Trail bike ride.
What's your favorite book right now?
I've been putting off books since I started campaigning because my brain is full. But um, I tend to read nonfiction because I like learning. So I would say that probably the one that I visited the most recently, earlier in the year, was um, the history of America according to Black women. And it's a history of, America from the perspective of Black women. So really like that one.
If somebody's trying to get a hold of you, do you prefer phone call, email, or text?
Text,
Would you consider yourself an early bird or a night owl?
early bird.
What's your favorite nonprofit in town?
This is, there's too many. I really like La Familia.
Tell us about what La Familia does.
Well, you said these were rapid fire. La Familia provides childcare, school supplies. Um, they do MIVOS, which helps leadership in Hispanic and Latino communities so that they can advocate in their communities, whether it's in the mobile home park communities, within their small business communities, things like that. They do a lot of wonderful things, health resource fairs, rental assistance, rapid fire.
Anytime we get a chance to help a nonprofit shine in the community, I think we have to take it.
Okay.
One word to describe Fort Collins.
Funky.
Funky. One thing if you could just snap your fingers and change about Fort Collins, what would it be?
Affordability.
Hmm. And if you weren't running for office, what would you be doing this year?
Minding my own business.
There's not a lot of that. From a place of knowing, having run, I know exactly what you mean by that. Yes, so tell me about how your experience of Fort Collins is, with literally everyone in a coffee shop, all of the strangers in Old Town. Yep, your nose is in everybody else's business, and it's part of the job, I think. Is there anything else you would like a listener to know about you or your campaign?
I welcome any questions. If you would like to meet with me for coffee, I welcome that. I welcome emails, texts. I'll even welcome your phone call. And if you would like to volunteer or donate or just send me words of encouragement, or even if you want to tell me that I suck, I don't care. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so at area code 970-481-3838, or you can email me at Daisy, Daisy, for FOR, FOCO, FOCO, at gmail.com. Or you can go to my website at daisyforfoco.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram at daisyforfoco.
And if somebody was looking into your campaign for the first time, where do you hope that they visit first?
Probably the website, because it lays out my position on everything. It has some cool photos from the campaign trail, and it has a little video with me in my favorite Pokemon shirt. So, yeah,
Okay.
I like Pokemon, by the way.
I didn't ask that in the part of the rapid fire questions. What's your, because it's not every city council candidate has one. What is your favorite Pokemon?
It depends on the generation. But
this is rapid fire questions. No, I'm just kidding. But which of all of the generations, I suppose?
I'll say Espeon. Solid, non-controversial.
I would say a decent portion of the listening audience probably knows what you mean. The other folks are like, well, is that like a Mario thing?
Yes,
which is
it
fine.
is.
Yeah, cool. It's
yes.
You know what? Mario Kart is an entryway for a lot of things, including Pokemon.
It's a gateway drug to gaming.
That's right. Daisy, thank you so much for being here with us today on Dear Fort Collins, and hope that you're learning a lot from these series and learning from your candidates. And Daisy, did you have fun today?
I certainly did, Nick. Did you have fun?
Yeah, actually, this is, as I mentioned, I always have fun on these, but this was the first time that I've been speechless twice in an episode. So I appreciate your willingness to be here and to share your ideas and thoughts with our community.
Yay! Thanks, Nick.